I paid for the venue deposit, the florist, the rehearsal dinner, the honeymoon hotel, all of it. And when my sister stood at the altar in the dress I helped buy, she looked straight past me like I was part of the ballroom. So I did the one thing no one saw coming. I pulled out my phone during the cocktail hour and canceled every payment still pending in my name. My sister's wedding was supposed to be in Asheville, North Carolina, at the end of September, when the leaves turn and the mountains go gold and everyone pretends that beauty makes everything okay. I'd been helping plan it for 14 months, not helping the way bridesmaids help, fixing a seam, picking up a bouquet. I built the spreadsheet. I negotiated the catering contract. I spent 3 weekends driving to venues with her because she kept changing her mind, and I never once complained, not out loud anyway. Because she was my sister and I loved her, and I thought that meant something. Her fiancé was fine. Quiet, a little passive. The kind of man who agrees with whatever room he's standing in. I didn't dislike him. I just didn't trust anyone who never seemed to have an opinion of his own. My mother was the one I should have watched more carefully. She called me in July, 2 months before the wedding. Her voice had that particular warmth she only used when she wanted something. "You've always been the practical one," she said. "You understand money. You understand how things work." She paused, just long enough. "Your sister doesn't have the same head for it." What she was really saying was, "We need you to cover the gap." The gap turned out to be $11,000. I had it. That was the problem. I'd spent 3 years building a cushion, because I worked in healthcare administration. And I knew how fast things could fall apart. And I kept that money in a separate account, like a quiet promise to myself. But my mother knew I had it too, because I'd made the mistake of mentioning it at Thanksgiving, and she had filed it away the way she filed everything, carefully, patiently, until she needed it. "Think of it as a gift," she said. "To your sister. To the family." I transferred the money 2 days later. I didn't even ask for a timeline on paying it back. The wedding weekend arrived, and I drove up Thursday afternoon, the same day as most of the out-of-town guests. The inn my sister had chosen was beautiful in exactly the way she liked things. Rustic on the outside, expensive on the inside. I'd been the one to book the room block, so I knew what every room cost. I also knew which room my sister had reserved for me. The one near the laundry facility, at the end of the hall, no window view. I carried my own bags up because there was no one to help. My mother was already in my sister's suite, laughing at something I hadn't heard. My sister's new mother-in-law was down by the fire pit with a glass of wine. Cousins I barely knew were taking photos on the porch. I unpacked quietly and told myself, it's her weekend. Not everything has to be about me. I had heard that sentence so many times in my life that I'd started to believe it. Dinner that night was at a long table on the inn's back terrace, all string lights and wood chargers and wildflowers in mason jars. My sister had arranged the seating herself. I found my name card near the end of the table, between a cousin I'd met twice and my sister's college roommate, who spent the entire meal talking about a podcast she was launching. My mother sat at the center of the table, right next to my sister, laughing and refilling glasses, and being the kind of warm and present that she only ever was in front of an audience. At one point, my sister's roommate turned to me and asked how I knew the bride. "She's my sister," I said. "Oh!" She looked genuinely surprised. "I didn't realize she had a sister." I smiled. I reached for my water glass. I said, "She does." Nobody corrected the moment. My sister didn't look over. My mother was mid-story and didn't pause. I ate my salmon and watched the candles flicker and told myself it was fine. It wasn't fine. I knew that even then. But knowing and acting on it are two entirely different things, and I had spent most of my life in the gap between them. That night I lay in my windowless room and listened to the air conditioning hum and thought about the $11,000, about the florist invoice I'd paid in June, $4,200, about the caterer deposit in May, $3,500, about the rehearsal dinner venue I'd booked on my own card because my mother said she'd sort it out later, about the hotel suite for the wedding night that was billed to me because my sister said she'd been confused about which card to use. I opened my banking app and scrolled through 5 months of transactions. Everything was color-coded by category. There was an entire column of green that just said, wedding. The total, when I added it up that night, was just under $19,000. I put my phone down. I stared at the ceiling. Then I picked it up again and added it up one more time, because I didn't trust myself to be right. And I was. $19,000, give or take, for a wedding I had not been asked to be a part of. Not as maid of honor. That was her college roommate. Not in the wedding party at all, actually. My sister had explained this gently, over coffee, back in January. I just think it'll look better if it's all her friends together. You understand, right? You always understand. I had nodded. I had said yes, of course. I had then gone home and looked at the spreadsheet with my name on it and thought about how funny it was that a person could be essential and invisible at the same time. Friday was the rehearsal. I wasn't in it, so I helped with setup instead. Arranging centerpieces in the barn venue, testing the sound system, confirming the catering timeline with the coordinator. Around 4 in the afternoon, my sister walked through to check on things and stopped when she saw me adjusting a floral arrangement. "Oh," she said. "I didn't know you'd be in here." "Someone had to make sure the tables were right," I said. "The florist delivered the wrong shade of ivory." She looked at the flowers. Then she looked at me. "They look fine," she said, and walked out. The rehearsal dinner was small and warm, and everyone made toasts. My mother talked about what a gift it was to watch her daughter find her person. Her daughter. Singular. I was sitting 4 seats away, and she didn't glance in my direction once. My sister's fiancé's mother, I'll call her the other mother, leaned over at one point and said quietly, "You planned a lot of this, didn't you?" I looked at her. She had kind eyes, the tired kind. "Most of it," I said. She nodded slowly. "I thought so." She paused. "You're very good at it." It was the only acknowledgement I received all weekend. I held it like something fragile. Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, I woke early and went down to the inn's small dining room for coffee. My mother was already there with my sister, bent over a notebook, murmuring about the timeline. When I sat down across from them, my mother looked up. "We were just going over the afternoon schedule," she said. "You don't need to worry about any of it." "I coordinated the afternoon schedule," I said. "I want to make sure it's still on track." My mother smiled. The kind of smile that ends conversations. "We've got it handled, sweetheart." I drank my coffee. I didn't argue. I went back upstairs and got dressed in the blue wrap dress I'd bought for the occasion and sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, just breathing. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "The florist needs the final payment today. Can you handle it? We'll sort it out after the honeymoon." The final payment was $1,200. I looked at the text for a long time. Then I typed back, "Sure." And I transferred the money. The ceremony was beautiful, the way weddings always are when someone has done the invisible work of making sure nothing goes wrong. The flowers were perfect. I'd fixed the ivory issue. The caterer arrived on time. I'd confirmed them twice that morning. The sound worked. I'd tested it myself. My sister walked down the aisle in her dress and she was radiant, and I cried a little, quietly, in my seat near the back. Not because I was bitter. Because she was my sister, and even when she hurt me, I loved her, and those two things had never been able to cancel each other out. The vows were simple and real. The kiss was gentle. Everyone applauded. I stood and clapped along with everyone else. During the cocktail hour, I circulated the way you do, when you don't quite belong to any cluster of people. The bridesmaids had their own photographs to take. My mother was with the family from out of town. My sister was being whisked from group to group by the photographer. I ended up near the bar, talking to my sister's roommate again, the one who hadn't known I existed. She was telling someone about the first time she met my sister, sophomore year of college. The story was warm and funny and I had nothing to add to it, so I just listened and nodded and sipped my wine. Then I heard my mother's voice behind me, doing the thing she does at parties, performing intimacy for strangers. "Oh, she's always been on her own wavelength," she was saying. I knew without turning around that she was talking about me. Her tone was affectionate in the way you might describe a neighborhood stray. "We've learned to just let her do her thing. She shows up when she wants to." I set my wine glass down on a nearby table. I took my phone out of my clutch. I opened my notes app and typed the time and what I'd just heard, word for word. Then I opened my banking dashboard. My mother had a card linked to a joint household account I'd set up 2 years ago when she'd gone through a rough patch and needed help with utilities. She still had access. We'd never officially closed it. She used it occasionally for things she didn't mention. I'd noticed small charges here and there but never said anything, because the amounts were small and I didn't want the fight. I scrolled through the last 6 months. The amounts were not small. A spa charge from June, a restaurant charge from August that I didn't recognize, a boutique in town where I'd never shopped, and 3 charges over the past 2 days that I recognized immediately. The welcome bag assembly service I'd contracted for the wedding guests, the morning of brunch setup, and something labeled floral gratuity that I had never approved. Together, just those 3, $1,460. I stood in the middle of my sister's wedding cocktail hour, in my blue wrap dress with a borrowed necklace, and did the math one more time. Then I went to settings, navigated to card management, and froze the account. Status: suspended. I put my phone back in my clutch and walked toward the appetizer table and picked up a crab cake and ate it in 2 bites, because I hadn't eaten since breakfast and I was suddenly very hungry. Dinner was served in the barn. String lights overhead, the mountains in the distance through the open doors, the smell of September air, and roasted chicken. The speech started after the salad course. The maid of honor went first, then the best man, then my mother. My mother stood up with her glass of champagne, and she talked about love, and she talked about my sister's resilience, and she talked about how she had raised her daughter to know her own worth. She cried at exactly the right moment. People at nearby tables pressed their hands to their hearts. She did not mention me. She sat back down to applause and reached over to squeeze my sister's hand. I picked up my fork. Later, during dancing, my sister found me at a table near the edge of the barn. She sat down beside me, slightly breathless, veil half unpinned. For a moment she just looked at me, and I thought maybe something was about to shift. "Mom said you've been weird today," she said. I looked at her. Weird how? Distant. Like you're annoyed about something. I'm not annoyed. She studied my face. "You did this at Christmas too. Just kind of check out and then everyone can feel it." I thought about the florist, the caterer, the rehearsal dinner, the room by the laundry, the toast that forgot I existed. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm really happy for you." She held my gaze for another second. And then someone called her name from the dance floor, and she went, the way she always went, toward whatever was louder and brighter and more fun than the conversation she was leaving behind. I sat in the barn with the music vibrating through the wooden floor, and I thought about a voicemail my father had left me 3 years ago, a few months before he died. He'd called on a Tuesday afternoon, which was unusual for him. He was more of a weekend caller, and his voice was measured the way it got when he had something particular to say. "You have a gift for making things work," he'd said, "for seeing what needs to happen and making it happen. That's real. Don't let anyone talk you out of knowing that, and don't let them use it without saying thank you." I had listened to it so many times after he passed that I'd memorized the pacing of it. When he breathed, when he paused, when his voice got a little rougher at the end. I hadn't thought about it in months. I thought about it now. The next morning, Sunday, was the farewell brunch. I arrived early, because I was always early. My mother was already holding court at the center table, rehashing the ceremony with relatives who lived too far away to see each other more than once a year. My sister was in a honeymoon glow, soft and untouchable, the way brides are on the morning after. The brunch was catered. Same company I'd coordinated, charged to an account in my name. I'd set up automatic payment for the final invoice to process that morning. I sat down with a plate of eggs and fruit and opened my phone under the table. The final invoice had processed. I went into my banking app, navigated to the external catering payment portal I'd set up months ago, and updated the account linked to future auto payments. I changed it to an account with a 0 balance. Then I ate my eggs. They were good. Herb scrambled, with a little goat cheese. My sister's new mother-in-law sat across from me, and we talked about hiking trails in the Asheville area. Which ones were worth the drive, which ones had better views than they had right to given their difficulty rating. She was easy to talk to. She said she admired people who could organize large events. She said her own daughter's wedding had been chaotic in ways that still made her twitch. "You kept this one from being chaotic," she said. "I tried," I said. Around 10:30, things started to unravel. The catering coordinator came inside from the service entrance and asked quietly to speak with the account holder. Someone pointed at my mother, which was wrong, but I didn't correct it. I listened from across the room as the coordinator explained that the gratuity charge, the one that was supposed to process that morning for the service team, had come back declined. My mother turned around and found me with her eyes immediately. The way she could always find me in a room. I looked back at her. I didn't move. She came over. Her smile was still on, but it had gone thin at the edges. "There seems to be an issue with the payment," she said, keeping her voice low. "I saw. Can you sort it out?" "Which account?" I asked, as if I didn't know. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "The one you usually use. That account is frozen," I said. She blinked. "What do you mean frozen?" "I mean, suspended, temporarily unavailable." I picked up my coffee cup. "I can give you the catering company's direct number if you need to work something out with them." My mother looked at me for a long moment. A look I had seen before. The recalibration, the adjustment, the shift from warm to something colder underneath. "This isn't the time," she said. "You're right," I said. "The time was probably 14 months ago." She walked away. I watched her go. My sister noticed the disruption about 15 minutes later, when the catering team started packing up early because the gratuity question hadn't been resolved. She came over with that particular crease between her eyebrows she got when things weren't going according to the story in her head. "What's happening?" she asked. "A payment didn't go through," I said. "Which payment? Can you fix it?" I looked at her, at the veil that was still pinned into her hair, at the ring that I had not contributed to, which was the only thing in this entire weekend that was actually only hers. "I don't think I will," I said. "But congratulations. You looked really beautiful yesterday." I put my napkin on the table, picked up my bag, and walked out through the side door. My car was in the lower lot. I put my suitcase in the trunk. I'd brought it down that morning, knowing I'd leave right after brunch, and sat in the driver's seat for a minute before I started the engine. The mountains were still there, gold and green and unbothered. I drove south. 2 hours later, somewhere on I-26, my phone started buzzing on the passenger seat. I didn't look at it until I stopped for gas outside of Spartanburg. Then I sat in the parking lot of a gas station with a bad fluorescent light and read through the messages. "My mother, what is going on? Call me." My mother again. "This is not okay." My sister, "I can't believe you did this on my wedding weekend. I can't believe you." My mother, "The caterers want a card right now. Are you going to handle this or not?" My sister again, "Everyone is asking what happened." I don't have an answer. I read each one carefully. I took my time. Then I opened a new note and typed, "Not my emergency anymore." I didn't send it to anyone. I just needed to write it somewhere. I started the car and pulled back onto the highway. The drive home took 4.5 hours with a stop in Greenville for a sandwich. I ate it in the car with the radio on. Some station playing songs from the 90s that I half knew and half remembered, and it was the most uncomplicated hour I'd had in 14 months. When I got home, I unloaded my car and hung up my dress and made tea and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I opened the master spreadsheet, the one I'd maintained since the beginning, with every payment, every vendor, every timeline item, every email thread. I'd kept it out of some instinct for documentation that now turned out to be useful. I exported it to PDF. I saved it to a folder I titled with the date. Then I went through my bank statements and pulled every transaction tagged to the wedding. I compiled them into a single document, organized by date and vendor, with a running total at the bottom. The number, final and complete, was $22,430. I stared at it. I'd spent more money on my sister's wedding than I had ever spent on myself in a single year. More than my car. More than my emergency fund before I rebuilt it. I didn't cry about it that night. I was too tired for crying. I just sat there with my tea going cold and looked at the number until it stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like information. The messages kept coming over the next 2 days. My mother's went from demanding to wounded to accusatory and back again. My sister's were shorter and harder, the kind of texts that are designed to make you feel small. A cousin I barely knew sent a message that started with "I heard what you did," and I didn't bother reading the rest. I responded to none of them. On the third day, my mother left a voicemail. I listened to it once, standing in my kitchen in the morning before work. "I don't know who told you that it was acceptable to behave this way," she said. "We raised you better than this. Your sister is devastated. I am devastated. You have always had this coldness, this way of pulling back when people need you most. I hope you're proud of yourself." I stood there with the phone in my hand. I pressed save. Not because I needed to hear it again, but because I wanted to have it. The real version, uncurated, unperformed, as a record of who she was when she thought guilt might still work on me. Then I went to work. I started sleeping well that week, which surprised me. I had expected insomnia, the restless kind that comes when you're replaying things. But instead, I fell asleep quickly and stayed asleep, and woke up before my alarm in a way that felt less like anxiety, and more like having somewhere to be that was actually mine. I took a longer walk than usual on Wednesday morning, through the neighborhood, and down toward the park, where the light comes in sideways through the trees at that hour. A woman I didn't know was teaching a small child how to throw a frisbee, badly, and with great enthusiasm. A man was reading on a bench. A dog was deeply committed to a patch of grass. I stood there for a little while, just watching ordinary life happen without urgency. I thought about my father's voicemail again. Don't let anyone talk you out of knowing that. And don't let them use it without saying thank you. I hadn't been thanked. Not once. Across 14 months and $22,000. Not a text, not a toast, not a handwritten note slipped under my door. But I had also kept quiet about it. I had transferred money when asked without negotiating terms. I had absorbed every slight and rearranged my feelings to make them more convenient. I had made it very easy to take me for granted. I wasn't angry at myself about that. I understood it. I'd spent a lifetime being the steady one, the one who made things work, and the conditioning runs deep. You don't unlearn it in a weekend. But I was done making it easy. A few weeks later, I went to a small ceramics class downtown, which I'd been meaning to try for 2 years and kept deferring, because there was always something else. Someone else. Some other claim on my time and energy. I sat at a long table with strangers and ruined my first bowl completely, and the instructor came over and showed me how to start again, differently, without making the mistake feel like a verdict on my abilities. I made a lopsided cup that afternoon. Genuinely lopsided, not charming lopsided. I brought it home and put it on my windowsill. My sister eventually sent an email, not a text, which meant she'd thought about it more. It was 3 paragraphs long, and it started with "I've had time to reflect" and ended with something about how she hoped we could find our way back to each other. The middle paragraph had the closest thing to an acknowledgement of the money, phrased very carefully in the passive voice. "A lot was expected of you," as if the expecting had happened on its own, without a person behind it. I read it twice. I noted what was there and what wasn't. I wrote back 4 sentences. I said I was glad the wedding was beautiful. I said I needed some time. I said I hoped her marriage was everything she wanted it to be. I said I would reach out when I was ready. I pressed send before I could second-guess the tone. Then I closed my laptop and went to make dinner. Something I'd been cooking for myself lately, actual meals, with ingredients I chose because I wanted them, not because they were easy or quick or what someone else preferred. I made pasta with roasted tomatoes and fresh basil and too much garlic, and I ate it at my own table, with the windows open and the sound of the street coming in, and I did not explain myself to anyone. There are things people don't tell you about setting a limit with your own family. They don't tell you that it doesn't feel like power, not at first. It feels like grief. A specific, confusing grief for something you keep hoping will be different. They don't tell you that the silence where the noise used to be can take getting used to, even when the noise was hurting you. They don't tell you that you'll have moments of doubt, not because you were wrong, but because love is not always logical, and sometimes you still miss people who were never quite what you needed them to be. What I can tell you is this: I am the one who makes things work. I have always been that person. I can build a spreadsheet in the dark, talk down a vendor at midnight, find the elegant solution when everyone else is panicking. That skill is real. It belongs to me. And I'm keeping it for myself now. Not because I stopped caring about my family, but because I finally started caring about what caring was costing me. When you've been the invisible scaffolding, holding something up for long enough, You forget you're allowed to step back and let the building figure out how to stand on its own. I'm stepping back. The lopsided cup is still on my windowsill. I look at it sometimes and think about starting over, differently, without the first mistake deciding everything that comes after. That feels about right.